I just want to say it's a really very big honour to have the church coming up on stage. I was just talking out the back because I know that they have a single coming out soon, and they said, well, it's not really a single, it's just the first listenable piece of music we've done in quite some time. Kind of encapsulates the way they treat their music, and you know, they're a unique and special band. I'm delighted for them to be here. So please welcome the church.
Let them eat Smarties.
I knew that was going to happen, just surprised it was quite so early in the set. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very special Big Sound keynote presentation. Keep behaving. My name's Michael Dwyer. I've been a music writer for about 28 years, and just to declare my prejudice, I've been writing about the church for exactly that long. And I was a fan for even longer than that, since 1981, when I saw them at what was, I think, the first rock music festival of the 80s, Tanalawn. Steve Kilbey came on stage and uttered the immortal lines, I hope everyone's trip is coming on about now, and I hope it's better than the one I'm having. Do you recall that?
Yeah, that was a pretty standard old line I used to use.
Was it?
Yeah.
It's been a long, strange trip since then, so I'll keep this pretty brief. Steve Kilbey and Peter Koppes formed the church in Sydney in 1980. With Unguarded Moment, they were an instant countdown sensation. It was followed by Almost With You, Tantalised, Metropolis, Reptile, their worldwide signature tune, Under the Milky Way, and half a dozen albums as indelible as The Blurred Crusade, Heyday, and Starfish. So much for their first glorious decade, climbing the ladder of success as defined by industry. That's a story worth telling, and I'm sure we're going to touch on it over the next hour. What's more interesting, I think, though, and more instructive for our purposes, is what happened next, which has been a further quarter century of pretty much relentless turmoil, through which the primary constant has been a compulsive commitment to creativity despite incredible odds. Personal, managerial, commercial, geographic, and chemical. So from Top of the Pops circa 1980, the church have found their ground as one of the most enduring, uncompromising, and inspiring underground bands in the world. Tim Powles joined the band nearly 20 years ago.
Powles.
Powles.
As in holes.
So I've been writing about them, not talking about them. And Ian Haug just a few months ago. When did you join, Ian?
November,
okay.
Yeah,
Getting on for a
ago.
year. Their new album, Further Deeper, is incredibly the church's 25th album in 34 years. And you'll hear them perform it tonight at the Zoo. I wanted to start somewhere in the middle of that story, around 2002, after a very tumultuous decade, which became very splintered and fragmented. The church came back with an album appropriately called After Everything Now This, which was reviewed in glowing terms in the States and in Europe and in Australia. Most of the reviews, I noticed, used the word rebirth. So I asked Steve at the time, always one of the most quotable interviewees, if the church had ever actually died in the meantime, and he said this: no, the church never actually died, but it was in a coma for a while, and there was some talk about switching off the machine. And to follow that analogy, I'd say we're out of bed and walking around the garden of the hospital at the moment. We're trying to get discharged and back into the way things were, but what we don't realise is that while we were under, someone removed all our youth. So, Steve, I wanted to just ask you to update the health status of the church in 2014. The prognosis is?
Well, we had a big blood transfusion when Ian joined, and we're out in the car park of the hospital. No, we're running down the street now. We're up and running and healthier than ever. And that was a tired old metaphor, that hospital. That's not very rock and roll. Hospitals and rock and roll don't really mix too well.
But okay, well, let's go to the injection of youth over here to my far left. Ian, you could probably give us a good perspective on the church. Some of us grew up with them. You were one of them, I guess. As a fan and as a young musician, what did they look like to you from the outside?
I was a massive fan, so it was a bizarre honour to be asked to partake in this whole trip. But yeah, they sort of, I guess there was always a look of mysteriousness. We're sitting on the right kind of rug, you know, here. This is, you know, everything about the church was...
Florid.
Yeah, florid.
Paisley.
Floral and florid in Paisley, yeah. So, yeah.
Did you say you were a massive fan?
Yes, I was, until I met you all.
Excellent.
Can you give us a memory?
joking.
I mean, for me, it was the first time on Countdown. It was, you know, anything. First time on Countdown for anything was quite.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably
revelation.
mine as well. Like, Countdown was, yeah.
And as a musician, did you find were they particularly significant?
Definitely. Well, Marty was one of my favourite guitarists, and as was Peter. So, as is Peter. Yeah, I think that with the church too, it's sort of one of those bands that you don't really listen to individual parts, you listen to the whole thing. And so I didn't actually know who was playing what, I just loved the whole sound.
There is a classic story about when Marty joined the band. I think it was on the 4th gig or something, Steve?
Yeah.
And that was all fine by Peter, but he refused to teach Marty the chords.
Well, Marty walked in the dressing room and I sort of had this intuitive idea that he should join the band. And Peter was kind of bemused about that, and because we hadn't heard him play. I actually asked him, I said, will you join the band? He said yes, and then after that I said, oh, and can you play guitar? And he said yes. And Peter was kind of bemused with that, and the drummer was kind of really hostile. And so when Marty turned up, he was sort of saying, what are you doing there, Peter? What are you doing? Peter said, I had to figure this out for myself, so you figure it out for yourself too. So that sort of started off their, that was the kind of the beginning of their opposite guitar parts, because after that, they sort of the other one didn't necessarily know what the other one was doing, and there was no kind of, they didn't get together and work things out. There was kind of like, I've got my bit, so the other guy's bit would always sort of be a counterpoint to that. So it sort of came about accidentally.
So that's why Marty was always leaning into his amplifier, because he didn't want Peter to see what he was playing.
Didn't
It wasn't a feedback thing at all.
Peter has no idea what goes on stage left. He hasn't even noticed that the guitar on the other side of the stage has actually changed yet.
I know you're wrong about that.
Actually, Tim, he actually asked for me and his wedge yesterday, which was unusual.
Hey. It might be a good time to address that issue. Peter Koppes is not with us today, but he asked me to give you this message. Peter apologises for his non-attendance due to long-term commitments in working with children in the North Arm State School Band. But he wants you to know that he's feeling more fulfilled in his own musical journey than ever with the church and new member Ian Haug. The chemistry is religiously intoxicating, he says. Tim, can you tell us a bit about that chemistry? You're the self-described big picture guy and reluctant drummer in the church. Tell us, what is it that makes this band unique in terms of their process and where that process is at with this new record?
I think a lot of it's the result of the lucky kind of, the band's fallen off the beaten track slowly. You know, from when, as you described it, sort of the first decade was somewhere, you know, more with a connection to the industry and the rest of the world and mainstream sort of success and all that. And then slowly it just sort of faded away onto the sort of, from like a dirt track somewhere into the jungle or the hospital gardens or wherever it was. But it was like, the great thing about that is that if you can actually survive, you actually genuinely lose any sense of either interest or any pressure to make music for anybody other than for yourselves. So we were very, very lucky because we basically started, I came along in '94 and helped out with a record, and then basically I've been there ever since. And we just started making records. When did you stop when did the formative jam thing started on Hologram, didn't it? Really properly?
When you joined?
No, was it on Hologram? Yeah, well, anyway, we started jamming records, so we had nothing pre-written. We started that back in '97, maybe. And since then, we've just done it almost, that's by default, on day one of a recording session, we fly in from everywhere, and people say, friends say, how's it going, how are the songs? And we go, I don't know, we don't have any. And we've got so good at it, and we're also we're lucky in that we were helped along the way by ourselves good and bad things that we did to be able to survive. And it meant that we could go in and maybe with, smallish budgets, ignore the usual pressure that artists have when they're paying for a recording facility, and have this kind of
Patrons.
We were helped by Kevin. You might want to talk about Kevin, I guess. He came up to us when we were touring Hologram of Baal, which was the first record that we made that actually kind of started clawing back towards where we are now. So it was entirely self-made. Steve and I shared a studio down in Roselle in Sydney, and we made it there, and it was the beginning of that jam thing. So, jam, like that bit. If you're lucky, play it twice. Often it was just once, and, sometimes we cut things up a little bit. But yeah, everything flows because no one's actually sitting there. You can honestly say that there's just not one tiny part of anyone's, thing that is thinking this needs to go somewhere. And we've gone so far with that. So this record was interesting because it was new with Ian, and we didn't even know if it was going to work. And I don't think Ian probably even realised the process and the way that we did it. So he kind of sort of showed up probably thinking we were going to do, something the way he was more used to doing it with structure.
Am I allowed to say I knew it was going to work from the moment someone said to me, you should ask Ian Haug? As soon as I heard that name, just like when Marty walked in the dressing room, the future presented itself to me, and I had total confidence, so I don't know why, that Ian was going to work in every way.
Ian, how did you, if we can just talk a little bit about that, it's in a sense a poison chalice. I mean, I think, well, that might be putting it too strongly, but I think you've already had some, some pretty nasty troll action out there just for purely being in the position that you are. How did that enter your mind? Did you realise you were entering sort of fairly?
No. Look, my dad said to me when I was pretty young, I remember my dad saying to me, what anyone thinks of you is none of your business. And I've sort of tried to live by that, because you can't control that sort of stuff, And I got along with Marty. Marty's, I would hope if I saw him again in the future, we're still friends. There's no weirdness. It was just this vehicle that was moving forwards that I have slotted in, and I'm loving the artistic journey, and there's no argy-bargy about the whole thing, so the trolls can fuck off.
How different was the process for you when you
Totally different. It was nothing, the musical experience you mean in the studio.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing like the fingers. Like, we were totally prepared when we went in the studio, and so it was, this was liberating.
Mm-hmm. But he slotted in like he'd always been there, and I was saying the other guys, wow, Hoagie understands our process. Mm-hmm. And he was there right away doing it, joining in and
whatever it is,
helping us along.
Yeah, we went for 5 days, and it was like, just try this and we'll get 3 songs out of it, and then the next 3-day block we'll record it, and we did 18 pieces in the 5 days. Came back and did another 2, ended up with 26 in 8 days. So it was exciting and a big relief for us too. Although Steve always knew it was going to be perfect, of course. But
intuition. No, sometimes you meet people in life, and when Marty walked in the room, and when a friend of mine said you should ask Ian Haug to join, you suddenly just see the whole thing, and you've got to trust those feelings. You go, yeah, that's the guy that you want. It's like you've gone to the end of the novel and you already know a few of the names.
They're both smart dresses. It's an aesthetic thing, isn't it?
Well, we would hope it's more than that.
The other thing is, Marty was a big character, and he was a big guy, and he had a big sound, and he had a big presence. We couldn't have some little skinny guy with glasses coming in, so we needed someone.
Do you play guitar?
Yeah, the glasses, but not so skinny.
We needed someone with their own trip that could walk in and go, I don't fucking care who he was. This is the way I do it. And Ian's just like what the doctor ordered for us.
The biggest difference there is, sorry, Michael, is that Peter, the opposite, rather than Peter going to Ian, I ain't showing you the chords, and so, for like however many years it was, there was never a chord shared between the two. Peter actually...
He showed him a chord.
He showed him all the chords, and now they're sort of, it's a bit mushy, actually. They kind of really like each other, and it's all...
He knows a lot more chords than I know, that's for sure.
We should really address this question of volatility, because it's something of a cliche that volatility breeds the great music. But you guys, the volatility has been quite extreme, and the degree of creativity has been quite extreme. Steve, do you want to address that?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's not nothing to do with him.
I don't think you can have a bunch of creative people who you want people to be passionate, and the passion runs beyond the music as well. It runs into everything, and we've been together for 30. I've been playing with Peter Koppes. I met him when he was 19 and I was 20, so that's like 40 years ago. 40 years I've known this guy, and we argue with each other, but when we create, we have a fire, and I don't think you can. Tim, and it's more balanced now because we have two sort of calm characters in Tim and Ian, and we've got me and Peter who are still sort of have a bit of argy-bargy sort of with each other and with everybody else, but the sort of balance is now kind of more. It's less likely World War III is going to happen now.
So you're going to make shit music now?
Oh, yeah, sounds boring, Steve.
I did want to talk about something Marty said to me a few years ago about the hits, the church's hits. He said, I can honestly say it was never about hits. We had hits by mistake, all of them. Certainly Under the Milky Way was a mistake. Unguarded Moment, Almost With You, Metropolis, Reptile, he named them all mistakes. When we did have hits and had more money, there were just more people taking it from us.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I think mistakes isn't the word. I think accidents more the word.
But there were people helping them sound like hits then. Everyone in this room knows about that. It's all the people that help things sound like hits. It's,
I think what he means is we never sat down. The couple of times we did sit down and go, let's write a hit, it was kind of pretty awful. I think it was like the results were never any good. So those other songs they all just sort of came along kind of accidentally, and we didn't realise they were hits until they became hits, and then people going, no, that's a hit, and we're going, oh. So we weren't it didn't ever, and it still doesn't really work out for us trying to sort of focus our energy into whatever and we were always, by the very nature of trying to write a hit, you're already 2 years behind the times anyway, because the hits that I wrote this fucking awful song called Maybe These Boys, which was me trying to have a stab at the 80s in 1984, and it's like the Achilles heel in my songwriting canon, and people are still going, what about Maybe These Boys? It's an awful song. It's cheesy and sort of embarrassing and got silly lyrics, and that was me having a stab at the 80s, already about 3 years too late. When I wrote it, it was all things had already moved on.
You'd already been thrown off the Duran Duran tour at that point, I believe.
We didn't get thrown off the Duran Duran tour. We left the Duran Duran tour, or I left and the others had to leave because I left. Our record company. Here's some interesting stats for you guys. The church were in Europe, and our record company paid £30,000 for us to be on a Duran Duran tour, like a 25-gig tour of the British Isles. And after about 5 gigs, I went, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. And they were begging me, and the guy was crying, we spent £30,000, this French guy. And I was going, no, I'm not opening for that anymore. It was no point. It was, there was no way you could get their audience. They were like 11-year-old girls, and they weren't interested in a bunch of long-haired hippies playing jingle-jangle fucking psychedelic rock. So I said, no, I'm not doing that anymore. And so in those days, you had to actually, your record company, for a big act, your record company paid big money to get you on the tour. You didn't, and there was no money for, that was just to get you on there. There was no payment or anything, just to open for those geezers. So.
So more generally, though, when you did have hits, I mean, you're renowned for not playing them. You've turned your back on them to some extent.
No, we didn't play Unguarded Moment because that's the only one we didn't play.
No, we didn't play Milky Way for a while.
For one tour.
Yeah, but we also famously didn't play it when we were asked to at railway stations, at radio stations. That definitely caused something we remember that radio. We basically got.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
when we
no.
lost all the radio support. In
No,
America.
but check this. They say, come into our radio station and you can play your new single and you can play under the Milky Way. So that's how they get me in there. And then I turn up there and the guy said, so you rode under the Milky Way? And yeah. What was it like the day you rode under the Milky Way? Great. What was it like when Under the Milky Way was a hit? It was good. So what were you thinking when you rode Under the Milky Way? Yeah. What about our new single? Oh, yeah, so tell us more about Under the Milky Way. And I said, we're not going to play our new single, are we? And the guy went, no. And I said, fuck this, and got up and walked out. And then someone rang me up and said that was the mothership station for 300 other stations who've now banned the church forever. So that was a fork in the road. So I just don't like this thing. Like the church have got so many songs. I just didn't like this thing of going, you're this song, you've got to do that song. That's all you are. That's all you're good for.
Yeah.
I overcompensated for that, and now I'm just trying to have a more sort of equanimity towards it and kind of go, is it really appropriate for this situation? We're about to do a tour, sort of the first taste of our new album. We're not playing any old songs. We're just going to play our new album. So if people are coming along to hear Under the Milky Way, I guess they'll be disappointed.
Ian, what's your feeling about that as a fan? You must have some kind of conflict about that you're not going to be getting up there and playing Under the Milky Way and Reptile, and some of those songs that presumably you feel are very near and dear to you.
Well, I'm sure we will one day, but not on this first tour. I mean, like, this will become part of catalogue. Hopefully I'll make another record or 5 with these guys, you know. And I think, is it 25 or 26, Tim? What's this one? How many albums is it? 25 or so?
I was trying to count this morning.
So I had to listen to all of the material and sort of, just in case someone said,
You
know,
didn't
no,
listen to 26
I
albums,
fucking
you lying
did.
devil. I don't
did.
believe
it. Took me 3 days, Stephen. And I sort of, took the ones that I wanted to work out.
What are they like?
They're not bad. I worked out like 30
Actually,
songs.
he came back with the weirdest bunch of songs. He was like, Ian says, these are the ones I want to play. And Tim's rang me up when I'd forgotten half of those. We even had songs called that. And they were all a bunch of the most weird songs we've never ever even listened to.
With good guitar parts.
Yeah. It didn't say Milky Way 20 times, but
By the way, you've had your shot at the hits at Bulimba last
Exactly.
week. Bulimba RSL Festival, that's it. It's the only time you're ever going to play almost with you.
That was my blooding.
I kind of wanted to get philosophically into this, Steve, because is there part of the mainstream embrace that you deliberately chafe against? I hear what you're saying about people trying to pigeonhole you in terms of what your biggest success was.
Well, it's like fame is a double-edged sword. And of course, when I was a complete nobody, I wanted fame and lights and glamour. And then when I actually had a hit single and I was doing all that, I realized it was kind of, there was kind of a really embarrassing, stupid factor. And suddenly you were being pushed around and so do this and do that. And the more, in some ways, the more, if you're after control, the more sort of famous and successful you get, the less control you have, because there's so many more people going, oh, you should do this and you should do that, and you should be here and do that. But so it's always a kind of a mixed emotion that you sort of, it's a bit like cocaine. You sort of want it, and then when you've had it, you could sort of go, oh, I'm not sure, and then next time it comes around. So there's always this kind of, there's a duality with being successful. And all the time, I guess, I was kind of going backwards and forwards, because as soon as we'd fall out of the limelight, I was grasping towards it again. And then when we were back in the limelight, I was trying to crawl out of it again. And it was just, I guess that's the constant, there's all these paradoxes and juxtapositions in my life and in the church's life. The sort of fuel, you know how a thing goes backwards and forwards between positive and negative all the time? I think that's that's why we're always in motion, because we sort of contain all these paradoxes and these sort of things that keep us going, because we don't really know, we're not really sure. We're not like the eagles going, yes, we have our thing and we're just going to do this and we'll happily be this for the rest of time. We're kind of like a bunch of sort of protons bouncing around an atom, sort of going, what the fuck are we going to do next?
So speaking of drugs,
Speaking of what?
drugs.
Protons.
Peter told me a few years ago, I mean, something I've always admired about you guys is, well, Steve, you in particular, you're very open about how hallucinogenics have, appealed to your muse. It's sort of the elephant in the room with a lot of rock bands. I noticed Andrew McMillan's just written a book about it, which is about time. It's something that's not talked about openly and maturely very often. Peter said this to me I'm not sure how open and mature this is, but Peter said to me a few years ago, we were taking risks. We actually thought we should get bravery medals for exploring the parameters of our psyche in order to bring back a view from the other side. Did you feel that the drug experience was able to be replicated in music?
Yeah, that's not just the drug experience, but the dream experience, the religious experience. The band was always trying to find that other thing and reproduce it musically. So you didn't have to, or you could, but you didn't have to take. And as I discovered each new drug, the first time I smoked pot, and then the first time I had acid and LSD, and then opium and heroin and DMT and ayahuasca, every new drug that came along, except cocaine actually, which I've never seen anybody write a decent tune on cocaine. But all the other drugs, as they came along, I mean, what's the sound of cocaine? A drum machine going as fast as it can going.
Rumours, isn't it?
What's that?
Fleetwood Mac, is that what sounded cocaine?
Yeah, but that doesn't sound like, that sounds more like opium to me, that kind of. But anyway, for me, cocaine didn't work out as a creative drug at all. But all the others, each time I encountered them, I went, oh man, I want to get this feeling into the music. I want to get this. Like when I first started taking opiates, I want to get this heavy, slow, sweet sort of, and that was Priestic was Aura. But no, we took a lot of, we used to go on stage, me and Plugi especially used to go on stage. We used to take mushrooms and acid and smoke loads of dope and try and get as out of it as we possibly could, and then go on stage and kind of explore that. Yeah, that was our kind of mission, I guess. And to me, it still is. I'm still trying. I'm with this album. I'm trying to create a sort of a druggy experience or a dreamy experience or a quasi-spiritual experience. That's always what I'm trying to do. Whatever I do, that's what I'm after. I'm not trying to make people happy or sad or angry or politically radicalized. I'm trying to go for that other thing, you know.
Mm-hmm. I guess just to finish that topic, the question is, was the trip worth it? I mean, what part did that pursuit play in the church's commercial decline and general estrangement from the mainstream? I mean, was it instrumental or not?
Oh yeah. I became a heroin addict, and I was a sort of a functioning heroin addict. But I imagine if you saw the church play when I was on the gear, I imagine I was pretty sort of boring and bloated and lazy and sloppy and hopeless, and I sort of pissed the whole band off, and I pissed the New York police off, and the Swedish police off, and the Australian customs men off. When I used to arrive back in Australia, they used to go, Steve Kilbey's here, and then 3 guys would come out and lead me back, and they go, we just tested your passport and found every substance known to mankind on it. And so it just became, I was like a big handicap for the band. And that's why when I got clean from heroin in 2001 or 2002, 2003, when we made Forget Yourself, suddenly it was like this huge handicap was gone, and I was back in the band and sort of functioning again. And we sort of had a big...
You were back in the front seat. You were back in the front seat.
Back in the front seat. And
there's actually one record where Steve plays about 5 bass notes at the beginning of a 70-minute jam, which was at the time the longest thing you could record on this DAT tape that we had. So we just jammed till the tape ran out, and we were there on our own. And Steve plays about 5 notes at the beginning, nodded off on the couch, and comes back round in the last 3 minutes and goes boom, boom, boom. And
I woke up for the end though. I was there for the end.
That was a bonus disc on Hologram of Baal.
And then I said, how innovative. I hardly play any bass on this. Isn't that cool? And trying to sort of find the positive within the negative.
It's which notes though? I mean, Marty is quoted as saying that I think it's the second bass note in Under the Milky Way that makes the song go in the direction. Have you heard this theory of his?
Oh, that's just the change in chord.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Marty
important.
puts it down magnanimously to a single bass note, but okay. Tim, in 1998, I think it was, after a gig in London, you met a guy at
I feel like
the
I'm
bar.
on, is it the money or the bag or whatever, something like that. Can I have the question again, please?
He changed everything for the church. Can you tell us who he was and how that meeting shaped your future?
Oh yeah, Kevin. I think we actually had a manager, an English manager. I'd sort of come into the band and we'd just done the first record, and I'd kind of, because I could engineer and do stuff like that, I'd sort of fallen into this production role thing, and people were coming and going in different places, different countries. Marty never would stay very long. We ended up having a tour of Europe around Christmas time, actually, and we played a place in London, and the guy showed up at the bar, and actually, I think we got a message from a road crew, come and have a drink. The drinks are on this guy, Kevin Lane Keller, and short story is, he's a big fan of the band, or certainly a big fan of some of the things we do, and he wanted to become our patron, but in a kind of a sensible way. He didn't want to just give us free money. He very carefully found out what kind of record budgets we were on, and he said, I'll match that money with, an equivalent amount of money, which enabled probably. Did that help the drug budget, Steve, all that stuff?
Yeah,
But
I fleeced him for some drug money for a while, I'm ashamed to say.
I think you fleeced him for all his frequent flyers as well.
I tried to fleece him. When the night we met him, he said, I'm going to pay for your next record, and I went, yeah, right. And he said, I'll fucking write you a check for $10,000 right now. I was...
Can we keep talking about this?
Huh?
Can we keep talking about this? I didn't know that one. No.
Yeah, no,
He's an amazing guy. He's one of the leading branding experts in America. We were very, very lucky, and he just sat in behind us right up until in 2011, we played a show with the orchestra at the Opera House, which was kind of the peak for us of a massive learning curve that we went on, where we learnt to play three classic albums. Other people were doing classic album tours. It became a cliched thing for legacy bands to do their big album, and we thought, we've got to do it better than that, we'll do 2. And then I think our website moderator said, why don't you do 3? And we were like, yeah, let's do 3, that's easy. And then, so of course we had to learn the 3 albums, but we got a lot better. So when we played with the orchestra, we were even better, and then we needed to film it. And Kevin's last great act to the church really was, he made it financially possible for us to do that. It was very, very expensive, and he then, in a very friendly manner, kind of retired from his position as our patron.
It's a highly unusual thing, isn't it, in rock and roll?
I don't know, maybe people secretly have patrons and they don't say anything about it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I sort of...
Do they?
Anyone got a patron?
Any patrons? No.
there are patrons out there. There are this is a strange new twist to this whole thing, is there are guys out there who become CEOs of companies and become this and that. And then they're sitting there one day and they read their favourite rock and roll band of sort of ailing, and they jump in and help out. Because Kevin was helping out a few other people.
Yeah, well, Kevin was like Levi's, Pepsi, the church kind of guy, wasn't he?
He never really got involved in our marketing. That's the interesting thing, even though he's regarded as, I think he co-wrote, about 5 years ago, he co-wrote the highest selling marketing book in America of all time or something. But which was interesting, he kept this very clear line drawn. He came on tour with us once, used to show up at gigs and stuff, and he was always bemused by our antics and stuff. But he was. But we were very, very lucky. But when I say lucky, it's interesting because you're talking about this before. I mean, he wouldn't have been there if the band hadn't had some inherent core thing that attracted him. And in a weird way, that same thing has attracted a whole other group of people around us from, there's probably about 10 people around us in the team who are just there because this whole trip we're talking about, and the fact that we've discovered that we can make music from nothing, and we're stuck doing that now, and we're just so self-believing. They love that.
Yeah.
And so we've ended up with this amazing lawyer in the States who's a fan, but he's like one of the biggest lawyers over there, and he works for us for free. And I guess that's just networking, and for younger bands and artists wanting to, try and get help and all that sort of thing. I think, to me, it just points back to don't chase what the industry is telling you to chase. Don't chase all those things. Like, just totally do your thing. And if you can be that pure about it, it attracts a different kind of person around you.
It struck me it's a little bit like crowdsourcing, but you've only got one donor. You don't have to send,
Yeah.
you don't have to send out 10,000
It's all
t-shirts,
changed now,
just one
because
guy.
now it is now crowd surfing.
Crowd surfing,
It's crowdfunding, all that kind of thing of, investment from other areas is obviously growing massively, and music's becoming almost like a hobbyist career, and everyone's got a sort of, parents are the first investors and all that, So maybe, but there's still patrons. I'm sure they're always going to be there.
Yeah,
We are pretty lucky.
yeah, okay. And you have a second one now as well.
Mind you, if you underperform, the patrons get shitty, and they have every right to be, and we've definitely been pulled in line a couple of times. But you should talk about Kip, yeah? Or are you going to talk about the...
Yeah,
Are we
no,
allowed to talk about
our patron did used to pull us in line a few times, yeah, our old one. We've got a new patron now.
Steve said, I've got my own fucking millionaire now, so we're going to do this.
I shared my patron with the rest of the band. There are patrons, it's incredible, in America, there's these kind of rich, middle-aged guys who've got everything they want, and they're going, hey, I've got a couple of $1 million, and so we got a new patron, and he said, I want you guys to make an album, and he sort of paid all the bills.
So
and
the question then is, what does he think of the album, and does
he
that matter?
fucking loves it. He came out there, and he was sitting there while Tim and I were working on the vocals, and he was just part of it all the time. He'd come out the studio, and he met Ian and Peter and Tim, and he just loves the record, and everything that happens, I just texted him just now and just said we had a great gig last night. Ian was really rocking, and everything was great. And
You texted him and said, yeah, we're talking about you now, Kip, it's okay. You're not being left out. But they're intelligent men. It's not silly. It's like, there's a basic underlying presumption that you will do everything right. And we're actually, you're talking about before about sort of old songs, new songs, commercial success and all that. You've definitely made peace a little bit more with the idea of being likable in a different way.
Yeah.
And that makes things easier. So we're a lot more open with the new record. But I think because we've been doing it so long, this jamming thing, we tend to I think we've nearly jammed up at least half a song on this record that's actually almost sounds like a single, in that we will never have singles again, because there's nowhere for us to have those singles played, really. Bit of community radio here and there, but we're officially too old for all the cool things, and so it's like we just have to keep on mumbling along.
On the issue of management, you had a reputation for a long time as being notoriously difficult to manage.
yeah.
I don't know if you'd like to plead one way or the other on that, but I wanted to bring up something slightly contentious, which is that Marty Wilson-Piper was your manager effectively for the last, I don't know how many years.
Yeah, but he was the last of everyone, well, not everyone, but we ended up being self-managed in 2000 because we tried this a couple of other managers and it always fell over. Because, everybody comes in from the outside and goes, wow, the church, yeah, I love them. I met my wife at one of your gigs and blah-de-blah-de. It's a romantic notion. And they get involved in the kind of incredible, complex, I don't know what it is, but the chemistry thing is weird. And there's people in this room who know what I'm talking about because they're learning quickly about all this stuff. But then they fall away. So they're not interested anymore because it's in a too hard basket for the return, and all that sort of thing. So we started, I had a crack at doing it for a while, and we set the whole thing up to a spot, and then it was just killing my life, and I wanted to be in the band and just reluctantly hit drums and stuff like that. And then I stopped and said, we need to get sort of serious industry-based management. And Marty said, oh, you and your partner did it. Me and my partner can do it. So we went through an interesting, period from about 2007, was it? It was pretty interesting. I mean, Steve had to, one of the interesting things that came out of that was that relations between Marty and I got so bad that Steve had to switch vans that we were travelling in Europe. And I wasn't allowed to travel with Marty anymore.
We weren't going to talk about that stuff, remember?
No, I wasn't specific.
You told me nothing was off limits, Steve, so I just thought I'd go there.
Okay.
That's in the book anyway, isn't it?
No, that ain't in the book, no.
You can
the conclusion to draw is that Marty was your manager for the last 5 years, and now Marty's not in
Do
the band anymore.
you know what happens? You know what happens with it's sort of like it was like the Russian Revolution. We rose up to manage ourselves, and then the band started, threw off the tyrannical managers, and then the band rose up to manage themselves, and then the band started denying the band. The band was going, no, the band don't know what's best for the band does. And I was going, the band want their pay, and the band was going, the band ain't gonna fucking pay you. So we had this, so whatever...
There was always a mythical they. There was always a mythical they. What's happening out there? They haven't sent us the worksheets yet. Where are the royalties? How come? This is all terrible. It's all messed up.
Yeah.
They. And the weird thing was that they was us, except that each band member was like, very weird.
My memoirs, which are coming out November 1, Hardy Grant, I write, the church is like Europe at the beginning of World War I, constantly plotting against itself.
Okay, thanks.
So, I think I'm doing another thing talking about managers today. I think managers is a really strange thing. After having self-management, I think Marty did a really good job too in most ways. I would never denigrate his management or what Tim did, but I would say what happened in the end was we'd sit down to write a song and go, hey, Marty, let's write this song. And we're writing a song, suddenly Marty would take a phone call and go, hey, Steve, you know that hotel in Hobart where you don't want to stay anymore? And I'd be going, hey, we're writing the song. Yeah, but I've got to book this room. And suddenly he was trying to straddle two things. And I think that was a conflict of interest. And I think what we wanted with the band was everyone just became a player. And there was no more, leave that to somebody else. I think in the end, that would be my advice. Don't manage yourselves, get somebody else, even though that has another whole bunch of problems associated with it. We had some classic fucking managers, in our days. We had Michael Chugg, and then we had a manager in America called Mike Lembo. He used to talk like this. Kilbey, you don't fucking understand show business. He was like one of those American sort of managers, and we had, and then we just had them all. We've had them all and said goodbye to them all. So I don't know.
Marty had some interesting, he had to make some pretty harsh insights that he gave to me about, running a rock and roll band, which I think probably, demotivated him a little bit. He told me one time the fans find it very easy to spend $35 on a T-shirt, but they won't spend $20 on a CD. Making T-shirts is inexpensive, making music is really expensive. If you want the church to survive, buy a T-shirt. So I bought this T-shirt at the next gig. But that's a kind of harsh reality, isn't it? That you put all of your time and energy. How do you...
Yeah, but I'm not... You know what? I'm not fucking interested in that. I'm just interested in guitars and music and words. All that stuff. That's the stuff that guys in bands shouldn't be worrying about, as far as I'm concerned. It should, we operate best, I operate best, this music operates best, I think, in a bubble where no one's wondering about those things, and no one's wondering about, T-shirts and record companies and managers, and everybody's going, hey, doesn't a C sharp sound great played against this weird thing you're doing there? And all that stuff is just it's just the peripheral chatter around the really important thing, which is making music, playing music. And for poor old Marty, suddenly he was saddled with all that stuff.
He loved it.
And he was thinking about it, and when he started doing that, the music had to suffer a little bit because he wasn't, he was straddling two things at once that aren't easily straddable.
Do you know how to screen print T-shirts, Hoagie?
I've got a scarf from doing that, actually.
Excellent. Look forward to your merch ideas.
Can I bring you in here again? How much of this is familiar from your work with Powderfinger? Are there certain tropes that just exist in...
Same venues.
I totally agree with what Steve was just saying then. That was always what I tried to do, is not think about that stuff. And to our own detriment as a band, there's some stuff we let slip through the cracks. But we always were of the opinion that you put someone into a position that you trust, and you don't think about the fucking hotel that you're staying in Hobart, or you just get on with writing the songs. Same with once the record's done, it's like, what's the single? It's like, I don't know. Like, you've recorded all these songs, you should be happy with any song that's on the album to be a single, really. Like, so, I don't know.
I want to compartmentalize myself from the outside world. I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to think about any of that. I just want to play guitar and sing.
And try and surround yourself with people that
Who make the right decision.
Good at doing what they do, you know.
But there's always this balance, as Ian says. Because of my attitude, I'm like, hey, Kilbey, sign this. Yeah, sure. Give me my guitar, give me my spliff. Sign this. Yeah, sure. Just let me play, let me sing. I know you're looking after me. And then when suddenly it's all over and they haven't. So it's a real fine line to get the sweet spot where you can just indulge yourself in being a creative guy and knowing that there are people out there working on your behalf. I sit down every day, just at our level, I sit down every day and there's like 2 hours of fucking emails. Should we do this? Should you do that? When are you going to do this? Where's this? How should that look? And by the time that's all over, I'm sort of going, Christ, you know? But I really think for creative people like me, I want some buffer from all that. I don't want to, and I hate when you, in the early days, all the interviews, which record company you're with, how do you find them? And it's like, fuck that. Talk about the music. Who cares what record company we're with? It's sort of, that's the bit I've always sort of been revolting against, thinking, I've always been revolting, but I've always been revolting against that. Thinking about all that stuff, people the managers and the agents and the record company guys talking about them and their world, is sort of irrelevant. And the only reason we're here 35 years later is because we've made great music. It isn't because of how well we've played the industry game. We've sort of stumbled through it like a minefield, losing legs and arms and members and, microphones on the way. But the important thing to me is the music and the songwriting and the creativity, and all the rest of it's just, it's fucking irrelevant, really.
Yeah. Well, speaking as a fan, what's always, the core of what the church stands for to me, and what I find so inspiring is your integrity. You do not pander, you don't compromise, you make the record you want to make when you make it. That's kind of rare in this world, actually. I think there's an awful lot of second-guessing going on before that happens.
I don't think we could have been any other way. I still don't think we can be any other way. We're kind of harnessed to this thing, and we're all riding it. And amazingly, Ian joined in and helped. He sort of jumped in, and we're following this idea. It's a really lofty ambition, what we're trying to do. We're not a sort of bunch of old guys trying to rely on our glory days. We're old masters, and we're trying to achieve this really lofty ambition of really turning people on. So when they come to our show, we're trying to turn them on, whatever that means, like make something happen, make a sort of a spiritual movement. And all the rest of it, is a kind of as a boring, sort of grubby detail that you sort of get involved in, and you try and the paradox of trying to ignore it is that people move into that vacuum and they're going, oh, Kilbey isn't really watching what's going on here. We can fucking fleece him, and then you overreact against that, and the whole thing's kind of it's a bit of a sort of a nasty side and you have to reconcile all of that, I guess, somehow. I still haven't. I'm still bewildered by it. I still get angry, The other day I was on a Skype with Tim and our manager, and we were discussing percentages and figures, and after about half an hour I just snapped and I went, fuck this. I can't fucking handle it, you can't be in both, you can't have your feet in, I can't have my feet in both worlds. I've just got to, from now on, I turn 60 on Saturday, from now on I'm not arguing, I'm not talking figures, I'm just playing guitar and singing. I'm not having anything to do with the rest of it.
Well, I wanted to bring up this quote. The first time we met Steve was in 1991, was for a feature story for Duke magazine. I found this quote the other day about the future. So this was nearly 25 years ago. Somehow we have to make the jump from being a pop group to being a modern jazz quartet kind of thing. I don't want to pretend we're four 20-year-olds going around the world rocking and a-rolling, because that's not what it is. It struck me watching you last night, that's kind of what you've become, a rock and roll jazz quartet in a way.
Yeah.
Following your own lines and coalescing into something which you couldn't do if you tried. It's just an instinctive thing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that I think if the 1991 guy would see me now, he'd go, yeah, you're on track, man. You know, that's the best you can do. You know, and we've all been playing a long time, and you know, we're actually bringing some real sort of musical excellence to this. You know, Peter Koppes, Tim and Ian are amazing musicians to play with, and you know, we're rock and roll as a sort of is a sort of a cartoon medium, but within that medium, we're pushing the boundaries of what you can do and still be a rock and roll band. And I think the 1991 version of me would be pretty happy with what I'm doing now.
What about the 1975 version? The one that was full of hopes and dreams and idealism.
Yeah, well, he would have been disappointed that I reached 60. I remember my dad said to me, one day I was giving my dad some stick, and my dad said, "You don't ever think you'll be 50, do you?" And I went, "Nah, I'm going to be 18 forever, you old faggot." You know? But there I was, and I passed that, and now I'm almost 60 on Saturday, but still rocking and rolling. So that's all you can really ask.
Fantastic.
Not rolling so much, just more rocking.
Just rocking. Sorry, Tim, you going to say?
No,
I just thought we've got a few minutes left. The guys have indicated they're happy to take questions. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question?
Can I just say something about the integrity word? And also, it's just interesting because I think this is just, I mean, this is a music business and industry conference, so I don't know if this is of any use, but people always go, "Wow, you guys are great, you guys are cool, the church." Yeah, I love the church. Every service station in any country in the world you stop off, you say, there'll be someone who knows who the church are. And so there's this weird kudos, integrity thing that goes everywhere that doesn't necessarily count for much commercially for us, you know, in all sorts of places. But it's like, it started at its core, well, before I was there, but it started at its core creatively with Steve's dream and Pete and Marty and that whole thing and Pluggy and everything. But once it had a certain momentum and it had just enough of that flash, and so they were lucky because Steve wrote Milky Way and had the right people around at the time. It's kind of, it was actually more the things that the band and Steve and that we didn't do that actually got us to the spot. It's not what we did. It's not the try hard part. It's not following anything. It was actually just, for right or wrong, saying no to a whole lot of things that meant we ended up in this spot where we were just doing our own thing, but we left. Lucky for us, this image is left out there of this sort of thing, you know. And whether the reality of the image and what we are now and everything's, you know, still great. I mean, that remains to be seen. But I think that that thing of following, you know, the latest thing and seeing things that are happening and going, as Steve says, by the time you get there, you know, they're gone. And I think that's, sticking to your own guns and also knowing when to actually not do the things that's expected. I mean, I was the messenger between Steve and the outside world for about 8 years there, and the number of no's I had to pass on and get shot for was like incredible. But I learned a massive amount about things. You know, I was just sort of young upstart from New Zealand who thought that everything was done, sort of, I'm a new wave kid, you know, with 70s roots, and it's like through the whole process of getting sucked into the church empire, it's been an amazing trip. And I kind of wish every young musician and artist in the world could have the same unlearning process. You've got to have a certain amount of skill, but to be able to just be so free that you can, everyone should try writing songs from nothing a lot, rather than, I mean, I know it's a little bit harder with, you know, electro music and stuff, but still not really, because once you learn how to do it, the self-belief in doing it is amazing. It really is. That's my little bit. I just wanted to stick that in there anyway.
Thank you. Anyone got a question for the church?
Ha ha.
Jeff Wilson.
Jeffrey, we know that was you. I've written 750 songs, and 2 of them were awful, and they're the ones people mention.
What, a businesswoman?
No, 3, okay. Thanks, Michael. Come on, there's some more rotten songs you can mention.
I like businesswoman.
That's yeah, okay. There's bus driver, businesswoman, maybe these boys. Where's the other one? That's not bad, is it? 3 out of 750.
Yeah, we'll pay that. I guess I wanted to end on a statistical note too. The church's new manager, Rick Chazen, told me last night about some number crunching he'd been doing on allmusic.com, which most of you probably know is one of the first and it's still one of the most trusted online rating sources. Rick compiled a list of bands with the most 4-star plus reviews, and it will surprise nobody that at number 18 is the Rolling Stones. They're actually equal first with The Fall, and down towards the bottom of the list is tryhards like Black Sabbath, David Bowie, Prince, The Who and the Beach Boys. The Beatles are in there at 14, not bad. But the second act on the list with 15 4-star plus reviews is The Church, which is a fairly amazing feat. And as Rick said to me, they haven't heard the new one yet. So
Yay, we're going to go top of the chart.
that could still happen.
So we just got to hope the Stones don't make one more record.
Yeah.
Or make a bad one.
Do you
They've
think the ATO will be impressed with those statistics when I have my meeting with them next week?
Well, I think the point,
get a credit.
I think the point is that from an artistic perspective, from an artistic point of view, this is an enormous coup, which I think outweighs an awful lot of, gold records and whatever else you don't have.
It's nice to hear. I mean, it's accidental, and it just, I guess, if you stay live long enough, and even though you sort of have all these terrible interpersonal relationships that we seem to be famous for, you stay together long enough, then, yeah, I don't know, bands weren't designed to go this long. So it's the new territory, isn't it? Do bands even try to be together for more than an hour or two these days?
No. When I was a kid growing up, longevity was definitely not something you were aspiring to. It was like burn out, like be famous, burn out, explode, die of a drug overdose.
You've been trying, right?
Drive over Sydney Harbour Bridge. Eh?
You should try harder.
I've been trying. I was trying to burn out, but I'm just rusting.
Okay, the screen is flashing red, so we've done well. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Big Sound and on behalf of the free world, help me thank the church.